Honorable Chairperson, sir, I'm the only speaker for my party.
But there is a time constraint.
You have listened so respectful-ish, Dharmendra ji. You have listened so respectfully and quietly whenever the BJP MPs and their allies have been speaking.
No, you are
and I'm very fond of you. I hope you will accord me the same respect.
I think so, Mahua, you are now senior MP.
Honorable Chairperson,
you should have respect for the chair.
Exactly. So
without speaking, you have started charging to the chair.
Not at all. It's a request,
please.
sir.
I think
Honorable Chairperson, sir, I stand today on behalf of my party, the All India Trinamool Congress, to participate in a discussion on left-wing extremism in India. It is richly ironic when today India, along with so many other parts of the world, is reeling under the terror of the right wing, when the West Asia crisis is enveloping the whole world, when this government has neither given us any answers as to what our Honorable Prime Minister was doing in Israel 2 days before the Iran-Israel war started, nor have the people of India been given any clear roadmap as to how our energy crisis is going to unfold. When queues are forming outside petrol stations, when black marketeering of LPG cylinders is going on, when airfares have exploded because the ministry has removed the airfares cap, suddenly you're having a discussion on left-wing extremism. Why? Because this beleaguered government, and more specifically the Honorable Home Minister, wants to use this as an excuse to pat himself on the back. For the BJP MPs and their allies to stand up and say, look, how great is Mr. Amit Shah ji? Sabko thok ke thanda kar diya. We are not stupid. Indians are not stupid. We can see this discussion and its timing for what it is, which is merely a diversion from what else is going on in the world and in India on the streets. Now, when we look at left-wing extremism in India, where did it start? It can be traced back to the peasant uprising in Naxalbari, in my state, in West Bengal, in the Siliguri area, 1967. It was a movement led by Charu Majumdar, Kanu Shannal, and Jongol Shantal. This gave birth to the CPI-ML, the Communist Party of India, Marxist-Leninist, in 1969, spread from West Bengal to other states, continues to this day. In 2004, the People's War and the Maoist Communist Center of India, the MCCI, merged to form the CPI Maoist Party. Now, what did Mao say? What had he said himself about guerrilla warfare? Mao had said, a guerrilla must move amongst its people in the same way that a fish swims in the sea. So what started as an agrarian uprising in a small corner of West Bengal gradually evolved into a major security threat for all of India, internal security, peaked in the late 2000s. When LWE was at its peak in 2011, approximately 180 districts, that's about 22% of the 800 districts of India, was under the grip of LWE. And there was a red corridor. This red corridor spread across central and eastern India. There was Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Jharkhand, Orissa, Bihar, parts of Bengal. Over time, this corridor has shrunk significantly. Now it's contained to merely about 3 states, Chhattisgarh mostly, Jharkhand, parts of Maharashtra. Now this insurgency was led by guerrilla-style warfare. It was targeting police, civilian infrastructure, and civilians, led to hundreds and thousands of civilian deaths. But LWE, left-wing extremism, did not just happen overnight. It's not something that just came out of the earth. Its roots are socio-economic, its roots are political, exploitation of native lands, displacement of tribals, looting of natural resources which rightfully belong to tribals, historical neglect of poor and tribal areas by successive governments. Now, LWE cannot be viewed as just a law and order problem, and it cannot be solved as just a law and order problem. It is a far more complex problem, requires a multi-pronged approach. Henry Kissinger had famously said that the conventional army loses if it does not win, but a guerrilla wins if he does not lose. As long as he remains, he has not lost. Today, the BJP will claim they have solved the LWE issue. But it's not a Rubik's Cube that you can just line up and you can solve. It's not so easy. In truth, the LWE solution has been taken up by the governments right from early 2000s when the UPA brought in Manrega, brought in the Forest Rights Act in 2006, and this kind of legislation, for the first time, gave tribal rights over land and their forest. And integrated action plans also decentralized developments, where you had district collectors and local authorities having flexibility to respond to local needs in tribal areas. So this success that the BJP government is talking about, its allies are tom-tomming, is a result of a policy. Is this a result of a policy of total elimination, where you've seen just a huge increase in the number of killings? Can that be called success? There's a 131% increase in killings between 2019 and 2025 in LWE areas, whereas there has been a 26% decrease in LWE arrests during the same period. Killings go up, arrests go down. So are you just cleaning them out, or are you getting them to surrender? There's a big difference. Between 2021 and 2024, nearly 1,300 deaths occurred due to LWE. The highest was in Chhattisgarh, over 800, followed by Jharkhand, about 300, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh. West Bengal, in the last 3 years, has had 0 deaths. But let's look at, apart from just killings increasing, what else has the government done for these areas? Let's look at funds. When we look at unutilized funds, security-related expenditure and special infrastructure schemes for LW areas did not utilize 14% of its funds in 25-26. Financial year which has just ended, 14% of funds meant for this area were not utilized by this government. When we look at the security forces, this area security force deployment is at its peak outside of Jammu and Kashmir, outside of Manipur. These are the most militarized areas. There are over 1 lakh vacancies in the Central Armed Police Forces in 2025 and a 70% increase in vacancies in the year 24 to 25. Let's look at suicides. CRPF, with heavy deployment of CRPF in these areas, nearly 160 suicides in the last 3 years, increased by 22% between 2024 and 2025. Look at the next piece of data. Resignations among CRPF increased by 290% between 2020 and 2025. 3x increase in 5 years. Tribal rights. You had 121 tribals who were wrongfully held responsible for the 2017 death of 25 CRPF Jawans in Sukma. They were all acquitted. They were first tried under UAPA, jailed. They were all acquitted by the National Investigative Agency. But they spent years in jail from 2017 to now. Let's look at infrastructure in the LWA areas. What has the government done? In its report on the Standing Committee on Rural Development and Panchayati Raj, which is chaired by my friend Saptagiri Ulka, who was a speaker before me, we are looking at road connectivity. Now, under PMGSY, there's another vector, which is a road connectivity project for LWA areas. Now, this was launched in 2016. The deadline for the completion of this was 2020. They had to extend it to 2025. 12,000 kilometers of roads were sanctioned. Till now, only 9,500 has been completed. 2,700 kilometers is lying untouched, funds still there. Education in these areas. You have the Ekalavya model residential schools. 31% of these schools in the LWA areas are non-functional. 69% of total sanctioned and non-teaching posts are vacant. There are no teachers. 70% of things are vacant. How are the children of these Adivasis in these areas going to get an education? Let's look at our state of West Bengal as a direct contrast. In the first 6 years of the Mamata Banerjee government, that's 2011 to 17, 328 LWE extremists had surrendered, 225 had been rehabilitated. There has not been one LWE incident in the last 3 years in Bengal, in Jhargram, in Bankura, in Purulia, in West Medinipur. And what is most important is the people in those areas have been integrated into a civilian development model of welfare distribution. So we are not using military camps to give them welfare like they're having to do in Chhattisgarh. The normal Duare Sarkar camps, the normal welfare reaches these people as it does someone in Calcutta or someone in Nadia or Murshidabad. Even today, while the Home Ministry is patting itself on its back, Bastar and Chhattisgarh, where the BJP returned to power in 2023, is one of the most militarized areas in India outside of Jammu and Kashmir and Manipur. Official data placed by the Ministry of Home Affairs indicates that as of 13 December 2025, the number of fortified police stations in Naxal-affected areas has increased from 66 in 2014 to 586. Look at the increase. Despite the government's repeated claims that Maoist influence has significantly declined and normalcy is returning to Bastar, there is no corresponding indication of demilitarization or phased withdrawal of troops. If something is returning to normal, if you have done away with LWE, then why are your troops still there? Why is the area so still heavily militarized? This is the first question. A particularly concerning development is, in this regard, in Chhattisgarh, is this Niyad Nellanar scheme, which has been introduced in 2024 by the BJP government in Chhattisgarh. Now, what the government is saying is it's a welfare scheme for Adivasis in remote areas. They've got 160 Anganwadi centers functioning under it. In practice, however, what is happening is essential services such as public services, ration, healthcare, education are all being done in proximity to militarized camps. This is raising very serious concerns because welfare delivery has to be civilian, has to be rights-based. Now it's being mediated through militarized spheres. Access to entitlement is done only if you go into a camp, a barbed wire camp, give your identity document, talk to 5 military personnel. Only then can you get your just dues. This for democracy is a death knell. So this is transforming welfare from a matter of right to a matter of controlled access. And there are persistent allegations coming in from Chhattisgarh, from affected communities, that many of these camps and associated infrastructures have been constructed in complete violation of the statutes of the Panchayat Scheduled Areas Act, PESA, and under the Forest Rights Act, without any due process, without consulting any Gram Sabhas. Now, what we've seen in the LW areas under this government in the past 3 years is not a transition from conflict to civilian normalcy.
Kindly conclude.
No, I've got 3 minutes more, sir.
No.
But entrenchment of a security-led governance model. Now, I've got a few primary questions that I would like to ask the Ministry of Home Affairs. Please let me finish. If the government's position is that normalcy is returning in Bastar and other LWE regions, what is the rationale for maintaining such intense defense security infrastructure? 2, will the government table district-wise details of all security camps established in LWE and whether these are in violation of the lands and rights of the tribals in the area? And what is the accountability most important for fake encounters and extrajudicial killings? Steep rise in killing, 78% increase in reported encounters in Bastar, contrasted with 1,000% increase in the number of persons killed. This is a serious and avoidable question. Are you doing away with people where you could have mediation and... Sir, 1 minute. Please let me finish, sir. It's an important discussion. We've asked for it. The House is empty, sir. Please, 4 hours has been given. Now, these developments... My time, sir. Please, I'm the only speaker. The developments must be...
I have already given 13 minutes.
Okay, 1 minute, sir.
No.
The developments must be examined in the context of the surrender and rehabilitation policy. Because what you're doing is you're turning entire Adivasi areas into surveillance states. You've got drones on top of them. They are having to homes. Residents are photographed. Village level data is taken. So are you just making entire populations, terrorist populations? There's one last question, sir, that I have to bring up, which is the DRG. This is very important. The DRG, the District Reserve Guard, was an auxiliary force consisting of surrendered Maoists. The government is today saying they are the backbone of the success story, but serious charges. These are all highly armed extremists who have surrendered.
Thank you.
How can you use them today, sir? This is against the Salva Judo.
Sri Jiaur Rahman ji.
Got the last line, sir. Let me finish the last line. To really remove
Just finish last line.
Yes, sir. To really remove the threat of LWE, we need to win trust. It's not about winning terrain. People need to give up fear. They don't just need to give up guns.
Okay.
So this is important. Please do not pat yourself on the back till this is done.
Thank you. Thank you. Sri Jiaur Rahman ji.